Startup Spokane is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is a joint effort between GSI's Startup Spokane, Well Dressed Walrus, and Spokane Talks Online. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. We wish you a great and profitable day.
Welcome to Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Media, your podcast home for everything entrepreneurship related in the Spokane region. We're a program of Greater Spokane Incorporated, and whether you're at the idea stage, you've launched, or you're growing your business, we want to provide you with the resources you need so that you can be wildly successful. Megan, without further ado, let's introduce our guest and get this conversation rolling.
Yeah, we are fortunate here in the Inland Northwest to have a number of great entrepreneurs who have chosen to relocate here after founding or running or exiting their businesses. And today we're joined by one of our favorite serial entrepreneurs, Jim Fowler. Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about your startup experiences?
Sure. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually have local roots. My very first entrepreneurial experience as an adult was Lookout Pass ski area. So when I was 26, one of my best college buddies and I ran Lookout Pass for 4 years in the early 90s. So that was my first connection to the area. I left right at the beginning of the internet boom and went to the Bay Area, worked in the various jobs, and then came up with an idea and founded my own company, a company called Jigsaw.
Mm-hmm. And what was that?
So founded that in late 2003 and exited that in 2010. It was, for lack of a better way of describing it now, a business card exchange in the sky. Mm-hmm. Salespeople, recruiters would exchange information they had for information they needed. It was used by salespeople and marketers and recruiters to go find people in organizations and communicate with them directly. And
so with Jigsaw, and let's just dive a little bit further into that, Jim. Was that an idea that you came up with? I mean, was this like soup to nuts Jim Fowler, or?
Well, it always takes a team, no matter what. And I did have a co-founder, but I will say that it was my original idea. And we can, talk obviously about, ideas and all of that. But there's no question that, I remember the moment that idea came. But it was definitely my idea.
Right.
And so how does that work? I mean, how does that compare to what we do now? Like LinkedIn, or how does Jigsaw get into where we are now?
Yeah, so when Jigsaw started, LinkedIn was very nascent, and in fact there were other types of companies that were in this same area. LinkedIn just ended up emerging as the behemoth out of it. So LinkedIn was about who you're connected to, and we didn't do that at all. Ours was raw data that you would find on a business card.
Right.
So it was what salespeople really needed. Like, one thing you'll learn about LinkedIn is InMail really doesn't work for sales. No one ever responds to InMail requests about sales on LinkedIn. Salespeople need to email or call directly to people that are potential. Right. Same thing with recruiters.
Yeah, so Jigsaw was really an early version of customer relationship management, right?
Not really. The data that we created, in fact, we were purchased by Salesforce.
Okay.
And because obviously you have a system, and the system is only as good as the data that drives it. Mm-hmm. And but really we were a pure data play. We were really more of a wiki. So think of like a Dun & Bradstreet, that's crowdsourced, was a better way of thinking about Jigsaw.
And so did you always have the vision of I'm gonna scale this business, Jigsaw, and then I'm gonna exit by having us acquired by Salesforce or some other big player?
So when you take, it was a classic Silicon Valley venture-backed story. We raised $18 million in 3 rounds of funding. We ended up selling to Salesforce for $175 million in their first big acquisition. And it was never, wow, I have this specific plan. And I think that if you think too much about the end game, the one thing that I did say consistently throughout the whole process was, we are building this company to go public. In fact, I use this analogy called wooden bats. And Wade Boggs, who played for the Boston Red Sox, he famously never refused to ever use aluminum bats all through going through Little League and college and high school because he knew he was going to the show. Right. And I always said, we need to be thinking about that. I would use that term wooden bats of we're building a company that can be great. The most likely thing that happens, because very few companies actually IPO, in fact, most fail, is that you get bought. And so we were always prepared for it, and Salesforce made us an offer we couldn't refuse at the time.
Yeah, what a great story.
Fantastic. So how did that segue into you founding another company?
Well, entrepreneurs, have energy and have itchy feet. And I remember my stepmother at a party we had, she's like, she calls me Jimbo. Jimbo's not going to let grass grow on his feet. So, I just think that it's like you're driving down the freeway going 80 miles an hour, and all of a sudden you sell your company, and it's like it pops into neutral, and you go, zzz. That was the feeling I had at the time. And it was like, okay. And so, I think there's a reason why you see a lot of entrepreneurs do multiple companies, because you have a lot of energy. And part of my feeling was, wow, I've kind of figured out the rules of this game, Now I want to play it again, now that I know what all the rules are, and see how, if it's different from that perspective. And it certainly has been.
And so talk a little bit about what was the next idea.
So my current company, Fowler, for which I'm now executive chairman, I just a few months ago gave up the reins as CEO to my younger co-founder, who's doing a fantastic job. It's a play along the same way. It's just, instead of just dealing with business card information, we're going after a much broader set of company information, going directly after companies like Dun & Bradstreet or Thomson Reuters, Dow Jones, et cetera, that create their content by hiring people. We, of course, enlist a crowd of millions of business professionals. We have almost 3 million users of the Fowler platform, which is free for business professionals, and they provide data, which builds the data set. Things like how much revenue does a private company do, or how many employees do they have? Things that there's lots of different uses for it.
Sure. And you said it's free to the users? And
it absolutely is.
How do you monetize in a company like that? We always ask our entrepreneurs, what's your monetization strategy? So Mr. Serial Entrepreneur Fowler?
Sure. So let's take LinkedIn. Great example of a free service that makes money from a freemium. We're about to launch a freemium. Okay. But really where we made all our money at Jigsaw and where we make our money at Fowler is selling that whole corpus of data to very large corporations for big ticket.
So it's what's behind the application. It's what you're doing with the data that is the moneymaker. And
sure.
The users are just getting to leverage all that information.
Sure. Lots of companies, will buy the entire data set. They need to know, we need for all the companies in the United States that make over $10 million as an example. That would be a great example of something that, people would use our data for.
What a great experience base, and we are so fortunate in our region to have you. You live in Spokane. I know that you carry a bag and you travel extensively for your work and your businesses, but to have your expertise and your background and your passion for entrepreneurship here is really incredible.
Well, I think Spokane is just an amazing place to not only start, but to build a business.
Right.
So if you are thinking about building a business, is it a spark of lightning that gives you the idea for that great idea, or is it something that starts as a seed that you have to grow and nurture?
Yeah, one thing that I tell all entrepreneurs is there are no new ideas. There is just new execution. And in fact, after I started Jigsaw, if I had a quarter for every entrepreneur that I met that came up to me and said, I started a company just like Jigsaw, and it might have been a little bit different. And think about Groupon, another great example. There had been dozens of couponing plays before Groupon came along. Facebook, Google, all had many. In fact, MySpace was huge before Facebook comes along. Was it a spark of an idea? It was a bit different what he was doing, but it was no new idea. And let's take Steve Jobs and the iPod. So my point to entrepreneurs is there's no new ideas. And what you really need to do is come up with an idea that you really believe you can get what I call market separation. What is it that the market is going to look at and say, wow, this is really different than what is out there today? So for instance, with Jigsaw, the idea was there are literally probably 10,000, and I'm not exaggerating, companies out there that sell some sort of lead list. So this was not a new idea.
Right.
But what we said is, wait a minute, we're going to require every single record to have both a phone number and an email address. And by the way, just having an email address was new for a lot of these because they've been around since way before email even existed. Number one. And number two is we're going to have, it'll be user-generated content. So in other words, it'll be a wiki, if you will. We're going to have people work together, and it was a give-to-get model. That was very, very unique. No one had really tried that before. And all the venture capitalists said the same thing. Wow, this is a great idea. There's no question that people want the data. The question is, how do you get critical mass?
Right.
So the point is about any idea is how do you do it? I can go back, by the way, and talk about the process I went through to come up with the idea.
Yeah.
So I was a VP of sales at maybe my third or fourth company in the Silicon Valley. And my wife said to me, you're never going to be happy till you're running your own company. So what I did is I said, I had a mortgage, a kid at the time. And what I did is I said, all right, I'm going to go take an hour every morning, and I'm going to get on my whiteboard. And I closed the door of my office. I didn't answer calls. I didn't, I had a big sales team. I just told them all. I blocked that out of my calendar. And I went up and I came up with two ideas that were kind of related to Jigsaw before I came up with that idea. And then I went out and validated them. And the validation process, and I call this as the beautiful baby syndrome. Don't ever go up, entrepreneurs, to someone and go, oh, look at my baby. Isn't it beautiful? No one will say, no, that's an ugly baby. You got to be honest and say, hey, I've come up with an idea and I need your honest opinion, and listen. Because so many entrepreneurs will just sit there and defend this idea to the death. Yep. So the main point is you got to take time. You have to be disciplined about it. It's not like you're just going to be sitting there playing golf one day and eureka, an idea comes. You have to go work at it diligently if you want to start a company.
Yeah, that's great advice. And we're having an awesome conversation with Jim Fowler, a serial entrepreneur, Spokane native, and we hope you'll stay with us. We've got a lot more to get into when we get back from our break on Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Media.
Hi, I'm Spokane Valley Deputy Mayor Pam Haley, and I trust Jeff Holey to continue doing what's best for our local communities.
I'm Genie Mayor Chris Grover, and I trust Jeff Holey to continue doing what's best for our local communities.
Hi, I'm County Commissioner Josh Kearns. Having worked for Jeff Holey for 4 years in the state legislature, I know Jeff Holey will work to protect and grow jobs and will watch your tax dollars in Olympia. That's why I'm supporting Jeff Holey for State Senate.
Paid for by Jeff Holey for Senate, Republican.
Is your child having trouble coping with a personal disability, but don't know where to go? Consider our friends at Breakthrough Incorporated. Breakthrough takes great pride in mentoring their DDA clients who have intellectual disabilities and their BRS clients who have challenging behaviors toward the creation of safe, appropriate, ethically sound life goals. They integrate programs at school and home to enrich their lives. They work hard to make a positive difference in you and your family's lives. Breakthrough provides a highly structured, fully staffed residential setting in local neighborhoods. 6 in Spokane and 2 in the Tri-Cities. Diagnoses affect people differently, so their service to each resident is unique, giving them the opportunity to grow and evolve. For more information on Breakthrough, visit their website at breakthroughincorporated.org.
What? You haven't been to the library lately? Stop in today and see that the library is more than books. Spokane County Library District facilities feature on-site technology, including Wi-Fi, computers, and printers, as well as free use of meeting rooms. The Library District offers events and programs for all ages, from story times to career development and employer classes to Social Security workshops. Our staff is well trained and happy to help. Find out more about your library at scld.org.
Welcome to Tom Sawyer Country Coffee.
Tom Sawyer Country Coffee only roasts the finest organic coffee for our signature blends. Enjoy a cup at our coffee shop and local businesses and organizations across the region.
I'm Tom Sawyer, and we choose the Pacific Northwest.
Welcome back to Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Media. We're having a great conversation with serial entrepreneur Jim Fowler and friend as well. And Jim, before we went to break, we were talking in great detail about ideas and vetting them and all of that. I think right now what we'd like to shift to is characteristics of successful entrepreneurs. I mean, you've been there, you've done it. I'm sure there's some challenges that we can talk about in a little bit, but let's talk about what the attributes are of a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think the first attribute that all successful entrepreneurs share is a passion, a deep passion. If you're gonna go, and everyone hears this kind of cliche all the time, that if you're doing it for anything like money, as an example, rather than your passion for what you're doing, you're unlikely to be successful, in my opinion. You've got to really enjoy it. Now, that said, when I started Jigsaw, I realized quickly, oh my gosh, this is a data company. And at first I'm like, oh gosh, data's kind of boring in a way. But then what I really got passionate about was how you created this wiki. How did you get, millions of people to actually work together to build a data set? It was more of a gamification play. And I was super passionate about that. And I've come to love the data side of it, interestingly enough.
So interesting, just real quick. So passion, you didn't have passion for the idea, but you had passion for like this process. And then it created interest and passion for data.
And then I was really, really passionate about it. And of course, I was also very passionate about the people. I mean, the thing that being an entrepreneur is the greatest job on the planet. You get to wake up in the morning and look in the mirror, and that's who you get to bitch at. And, but it's also comes with a lot of responsibility. I mean, we had 150 employees, and their livelihoods depend on the decisions that you and your team make, and they make. So I think that you got to be passionate. Another attribute I think is it's a concept that I call being an optimistic realist. You have to be an optimist or you slit your wrists. I mean, running a company, especially a startup and a tech startup in particular, it's been described not by me originally, but I agree with it wholeheartedly as one morning you feel like you're going to be supreme exalted ruler of the universe. By lunch, you've realized it's a house of cards and it's never going to work. And by the time you go back to home at 8 o'clock at night, probably it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the supreme exalted ruler of the universe again. I mean, it's just this wild ride that it's not cut out for all people. You got to be able to handle the highs and the lows. And so being an optimistic realist means I've got to be optimistic. I've got to believe, and that's where that passion is required. But at the same time, you have to be a realist. You have to be able to look at the brutal facts of your business and be able to make changes and plan around that, not just go, oh, la, 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 it's going to be great. And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs fail.
Oh, that's great.
Well, and one of the challenges, like you mentioned, the person that you get to complain to is yourself. That would also require a wide range of skills. So when you started as an entrepreneur, did you feel like you possessed all the skills necessary to successfully execute on a business?
Well, I think that there's really 3 skills that all really successful entrepreneurs need. Number 1 is they need to set, and this is a 3-part part.
Okay.
They need to set the vision, the strategy, and the culture of their business. That's up to the founder. And now you're going to get a lot of people to implement them. I would go to my team and say, this is my vision, let's work on it together. But I think you have to lead with the vision, and then everyone will help you. It doesn't mean it's perfect, because I always used to say the only thing I like better than one of my ideas swiftly executed is a better idea. And that's what your team is for. Because the second thing is you need to hire a great team, because you have to recognize that you're not going to be great at everything. Like we were just talking in a moment ago, I'm not a technical founder. I founded 2 tech companies in the Silicon Valley, but I couldn't write a line of code to save my life. You have to be able to understand how to hire people, and your BS meter's got to be really good, because I wouldn't know whether that line of code was right or wrong. And then lastly, you have to either raise money or sell. Yep. And the main point is that you have to get out in the trenches and make sure that your company has money, because the reason that the other biggest piece of advice I give entrepreneurs, and it's sage old advice, is cash is king.
Yep.
The reason your business is going to fail is because you run out of money. I don't care whether you raised $100 million in the Silicon Valley or you raised $10,000 here in Spokane for a non-tech startup. You can see your cash problems coming a mile away. And I learned this the hard way at Lookout Pass. We were Well, it ended up being 3 of us, 3 young guys. We were overly optimistic. We were not realistic enough about it. We overspent on advertising and inventory, and we lived in mortal terror of making payroll and paying our vendors. And it sucked.
Yeah.
And I vowed I will never do that again. And again, we overinvested. We were not cautious enough. And you have to plan for a worst day, plan for the worst case scenario. And plan for a worst case, but hope for a best, and be able to change as the data changes that scenario. Yeah, that's where the realism comes in.
Right, and that's a great example of one of the challenges that you faced in your career with cash management. What other stumbles have you had in your career?
I think that you've got to, there's a concept I call leadership versus management, and I'm a much better leader than I am manager. And I say leaders are born. Management is a craft that you learn over time. And you have to make sure you have good managers and be realistic. So the other attribute really about this is being able to really self-assess, because you are not going to be good at everything. And being really honest with yourself about what you're good at, and not hiring people just like you, but hiring people that complement you. I said from the beginning, I need good operators. I know what good operations look and smell like, but I'm not good at putting them in place. I'm good about firing people up and marching in the straight line and being the vision guy, but I needed good operators. And I think that's why Jigsaw was successful, was that and Owler is being successful because we're good at hiring complementary people and then making sure everyone understands it's a team. I mean, your job as the entrepreneur, as the founder, is tie them all together. One person has to do that, and it's almost always the entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really valuable. It's valuable advice to remind entrepreneurs that they don't have to know everything.
Oh, no.
And to recognize what their weaknesses are or what areas they need to fill and complement around them. And your story right there, I think, just really exemplifies that.
When you go to raise money from anyone, looking those people right in the eye and saying, this is what I'm good at and this is what I'm not good at, that's what they call, hey, this person is realistic. They're authentic. They're not trying, I know what I've got. And because they know they're not going to get everything with one person. So it's a huge mistake that especially young entrepreneurs make.
That's great. Jim, let's take a little detour. Talk about the Spokane ecosystem. From your perspective. You're a successful serial entrepreneur. Most of your businesses have actually been located in the Silicon Valley, where you've grown team and money. What does Spokane have in terms of attributes to help support entrepreneurship in our ecosystem?
Sure. So actually, to correct you, Jigsaw, we had 150 employees when we got bought by Salesforce. Well, 2/3 of those were here in the Spokane. So I have always, in fact, on all those jobs I had as a VP of sales before I founded Jigsaw, I always had sales and customer success teams here. I think Spokane is an ideal place to not only found a business, but to grow a business. It's business friendly, it's gorgeous. I mean, we all live here, we know why we live here. It's an amazing place. The biggest problem we have, in my opinion, is our technical talent flees for the coasts. Yeah. They go to the Silicon Valley, but more likely from here they go to Portland and Seattle. We have to find a way to keep our best and brightest tech talent here. Yep. I think there's lots of sales and marketing talent. I think customer success is perfect for here. We have great schools. I mean, it's not that we're not producing the talent itself. It's just that we're not doing a good enough job. Now, it's changing and changing quickly. And we just heard at the Triangle Venture Expo some entrepreneurs who have had great success hiring technical talent here. But mostly what I hear is that's the biggest problem. Yeah. But I think it's amazing. I mean, I think medical of all, or let's just call healthcare companies of all flavors, we have a massive infrastructure here, 2 new medical schools. So that's an obvious place for us to just knock it out of the park. But, tech is granted, I come from tech, so I'm a little biased, but tech definitely represents high-paying jobs. And I think, what is the goal? A lot of us have children, and although I'm highly in favor of, my son going off and getting some big city experience somewhere, I want him to come back here and found a company and raise a family.
Exactly.
And I think that's our biggest challenge right now is keeping our tech talent, making sure that they know that they have great jobs here.
Yeah, great words of wisdom. I think we're all in alignment on that, and it's part of the reason why Startup Spokane is so focused on trying to help entrepreneurs with scalable ideas launch and grow and be successful, because those in turn will create high-paying jobs and hopefully keep our graduates here locally. Jim, I can't thank you enough for being our guest today on the program. I think you've shared some incredible insights on ideas and the attributes of a successful entrepreneur. I hope that our listeners got lots of value out of this, and please join us next time for another broadcast and podcast on Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Radio. We'll see you soon.
StartUp Spokane is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is a joint effort between GSI's StartUp Spokane, Well Dressed Walrus, and Spokane Talks Online. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. We wish you a great and profitable day.